everyone, welcome to Spotlight, presented to you by Gaitak. Today we're joined by Gohar Ghalustian. She's a constitutional lawyer, PhD, teacher and researcher of public law. She's a 2023-24 Youth Ambassador to Armenia, representing Montpellier, France. She's a member of the French Association of Armenian Lawyers Council and the Vice President of Montpellier's Armenian Association. Today, we talk about the French Armenian community's successes at lobbying for major international foreign policy gains for Armenia over the past decade. We discuss various concrete ways for diasporans to get involved in Armenia, including the Diaspora Youth Ambassador Program and her experiences there. We talk about the similarities and differences of our communities in Australia and France, the dangers of mixing church and state, and lots of other topics. Enjoy. Yeah, Gohar, thanks for joining on Gaitak Spotlight. Yeah, real easy first question. Just wanted to get some of your background, your professional history, your history in from Montpellier, and how that's all been.
I've been living in France since for 18 years. So I'm a lawyer. I'm PhD doctor of constitutional law, and in this moment I'm teacher and researcher at public and constitutional law in Montpellier University and in the University of situated in the west of France. And about my my Armenian community application, I am also the vice president of Montpellier's Armenian Association. I'm the member of French Association of Armenian Lawyers, and I'm the member of this association's council. And I'm also this year's young ambassador of Diaspora from Montpellier, so from France.
Yeah, amazing. And what's sort of been the trajectory from when you were younger? How did you sort of integrate into the Armenian community to get into these sorts of roles? And what's it like growing up in Montpellier as a diasporan Armenian?
So when I was growing up, when I was child in Moscow and maybe more a teenager in France, I think it would be more difficult that for young people from nowadays, because the Armenian associations were maybe less present and less developed, and my principal community link was with my parents and with my family, and I'm very thankful to them because of their will and maybe discipline. I speak fluently Armenian, and it is something which is very important to me, because where I'm in Yerevan, I guess I have this Yerevan accent, and sometimes I even I can from time to time to be like a local, even if taxi drivers are always very strong and they got this immigrant thing very quick. And then more I was growing up, and the more my application was more personal, and I started to attend the Armenian Association in the beginning. I was shy because I was not really I didn't know how to get it, but more I was going to the association and more I was meeting people, and I just understood that Armenians are nice, and I met Armenians from all over the world who live in Montpellier, and here we have a real example of this community living without sharing a lot, even if it's not very easy every time. But anyway, we have this classic diaspora with new Armenians and so on. So it's more it began with my parents, but I think the application must be personal, and just one day you find that it is something important to you and to get your identity.
Yeah, right. And what sort of like things were you getting involved in? For example, it could be sport, or I don't know, music or church, or what sort of were the avenues you were participating through?
So our association participates in different events. For example, we take part to Euro-Armenian Games and Pan-Armenian Games, which take place in Armenia, so Pan-Armenian Games, and in European, one of the European cities for European Games. For example, we were at Euro-Armenian Games in Barcelona in April. And it was a kind of amazing weekend because you meet a kind of 600 young Armenian people like you, and you do sport. And the most important thing is you connect with your roots, and it's not only about we get together, we eat Armenian food and we just dance. It's something more deep. And for example, in our group, we had young people who have never been in Armenia, and they only have Armenian name, And when we came back to Montpellier, these teenagers told me that they are going to get married to an Armenian girl. It's something that was impossible. It's something which can seem like funny or just a fact, but it's something more. It's deeper than that, and we really need this kind of things. And we are preparing a concert which is going to take place next week for Charles Aznavour memory. So we have musicians and a group of singers which are preparing this concert, and the goal is not to make a concert for Armenians, but to make Armenian culture get even better known to more larger public. Even if Charles Aznavour does not need an ad, but anyway, it's important to us. It's also our role. And my role, more precisely in our association, is about administrative things, because we have a very good relationships with local authorities, which support us really very hard, and it's something very important to us. They take place to all the manifestations we get for Artsakh and for Armenia, and they always were near us, and it's something very important to us.
Yeah. So I think that's a very interesting point. If I'm comparing, Montpellier, I think France at large, to the Australian-Armenian community, what do you think is the reasons or sort of the work that's been done for you guys to have these close relationships with local governing bodies? And you can see it obviously on a national level, which I always figured it's because there's lots of Armenians in France, but I think that's a very sort of a crude observation for lack of more information. Maybe you could talk to that if you could see sort of what sort of might be the causes and the reasons for these connections.
Yeah, so obviously, French community is one of the biggest community in the world. If I'm not mistaken, it is the third one after Russian and American one. But to compare to Russian community, which is much bigger, the French one seems to be much more influencing. There are a lot of reasons. One of them are this kind of strong personalities like Charles Aznavour or Misak Manouchian, also, and I can have a very long list about them, who made the Armenian known and in the right way, and that is really very important. And secondly, it's also we are lucky to be in a country which is like Armenophile, which is more about Armenian side, and it's much more open to Armenian problems and history, and it is better known than in other countries. But in the same time, we must be very clear about the fact that even in France, and it is even worse in other countries, the Armenian history is not as well known as we think, and it is our role, and it is is the role of each and every Armenian to tell the story and to tell the right story, because the story is going to be told with someone. So or we are going to do this, and people are going to know our version of the story, or other parties is going to do this. Yeah. So a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. It's I think obviously, yeah. Charles Aznavour is a global figure, and it's interesting to think that promotion it covers such a broad diverse community, which is really interesting. I struggle to sort of think of a comparison, obviously in Australia, but I think one thing that separates, well, I've found in my experience, I don't want to generalize too broadly, but one thing that separates our groups was basically the way we organize them and the way we govern them. It's actually very different to how Australia governs itself. So if the country's, one giant community group that's existed for 100 and something years in Australia's case, it looks to network the organizations, sort of push the power out to the community as much as possible, so it's as little authoritarian style of a system as possible. Do you guys find the way you organize yourselves has a relationship or mimics somewhat to how France, being known as a quite active, the public being quite active in the governance process and protesting and those sorts of things when there is something the population doesn't agree with. Do you guys have many similarities between the Armenian community groups and Montpellier local government authorities and France in general?
So about the organization of the French Armenian community, as I think everywhere, it is not it is far of being perfect, but we try to do the best. And the thing which is also important in France is the local associations, and they sometimes more active and more influencing, and they do a great job, and particularly with the local authorities, which are also quite important in France, even if we are not in a federal country, but regions, departments, or major cities are very important. And I guess that most of the French delegations, political delegations, which go to Armenia, are from local authorities, and they are important to take in account. Last week I was in Armenia, and I knew that there are at least 2 French delegations which visit Armenia every month. So it means that every 2 weeks we have a French delegation, and
right.
We have to understand that even if French people are very Armenian friendly, no one is going to wake up one day and say, guys, let's go to Armenia. There is a very important local lobbying, which is made by Armenian people in every levels, and the most useful thing we can do is to do this lobbying in the level we can attend. So it can be in political, in art, in culture. I mean, any way you are, you can be useful. And if just going to take your coffee, you tell your colleagues what's happening in Armenia, it's also a kind of lobbying. And if you have the opportunity to meet your city mayor and to say, hey guy, there is something very important going on. So we also have to be rational, and it's good about, we are friends. It's a fact. But in politics, we don't have friends. We also have interests. Yep. So we also have smart enough and to be able to make people understand that being Armenian friendly is something which is also interesting for them, for a lot of reasons of human rights protection, of electoral things and so on. So it's not about being it's not about being cynic or about it's about being smart, and smart lobbying is also about, and this Armenian vocabulary, friends, enemy, how do you say it? Brother countries, all this sentimental vocabulary talking about politics. It's something very particular to Armenians. That is good because it's also about our soul. We are very friendly and we like this kind of things. But in politics, we also have interests. Yeah, and you have also to be smart enough.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. I'd be keen to look further into that. Maybe not right now, but sort of see what key lessons our community can learn from the various French Armenian communities. That sort of lobbying on a international level has obviously been very effective, and there's some which you obviously know better than I, has led to some huge advances for Armenia on like a foreign policy level, which I think flies under the radar in terms of how huge these developments really are. Things like just weapon sales from France, or being able to ship weapons through Georgia, and that's all coming obviously from European pressure, and it's all built up from that local level until it gets to the international level. So that's really amazing. It'd be great to just sort of research that further and take like specific lessons and bring those to Australia. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your sort of professional life, like whatever's sort of interesting that you've been working on recently, and probably more specifically how your profession has linked you to Armenia, and what sort of things you've been doing there.
Yep. So I'm teacher at the university. It's more about French and comparative law, constitutional law. But and so I have to respect a kind of program. We have a lot of freedom, but we also have kind of program. But as a teacher, we have much more freedom, and we actually can research on any topics we would like. My PhD research was also in comparative law, but I made a rational decision not to bring Armenia to my doctoral research, because I really wanted to disconnect my professional life and my personal lives, and not to have a kind of sentimental thing, with the work I have. So I was working on US, UK, Russian, and French systems. But once the PhD is done, and even during that, you also publish different things and different researches, and I mean, you can't escape, because Armenia is so rich on events, on political and law and legal events, that I try to have a publication about every important thing which takes place in Armenia. For example, I presented something about the constitutional reform, which was in Armenia in 2015, and that was the beginning of. It was the first step which brought us to the revolution of 2018. More recently, now I'm publishing. It's going to be published in the beginning of July. A publication about the constitutional reform of Constitutional Court, which also was in 2020, and maybe it can seem to be very theoretical or something very far from our everyday lives. But actually, the Constitutional Court members take very important decisions about the laws which are going to be applied in Armenia. So that is nothing. That is not just a reform. It's something very important. And so it's also important to explain these things to French community, to French audience, and to show the evolutions we have in Armenian system. And it's also kind of it's a way also to communicate with my colleagues, my my lower colleagues from Armenia, because we are not always sharing the same opinion about the same things. And recently, in the end of May, I was in Armenia to take part in a conference organized by the Academy of Administration of Public Administration of Armenia, and it was the opportunity to meet new colleagues. And I think it's really very important to get these bridges between Armenian from Armenia and the diaspora in the professional fields. I mean, it's important that lawyers all around the world work with lawyers from Armenia, because everyone is trying to do something. Everyone is obviously is full of goodwill, but it will be much more useful if we work on the same project, and we just spend our energy to something which is to a common goal, and we are not just losing our energy and trying to do something. And also with the French Association of Armenian Lawyers, we work a lot with European institutions. We sent them open letters, for example, all during the Artsakh war. We were sending and letters in order to get known what is going on, in order to ask to react. So it's also a soft power, because obviously we're not going to change something just with one act, but it is small soft power lobbying, which is hopefully is going to give something more important.
Yeah, right. And how much time do you typically spend in Armenia, like in a given year? I know you're doing a few things this year, but what's sort of your connection in terms of physical presence in Armenia?
So last year I was in Armenia 3 times. One was to take part, to participate to this Young Armenian Summit, which was also very, very interesting and enriching event. Second was for the Young Ambassador program. Maybe we are going to talk about this. And the third one was just personal, in order to just have a rest and to see some friends and relatives. And this time I spent 3 weeks in Armenia doing this conference, also having projects with French lawyers and Montpellier's local authorities representatives, and also 1 week just having the Yerevan's vibe and just having a rest.
Yeah, awesome. Before we get to the Young Ambassador program, I just wanted to ask, this is more of like a, I guess, housekeeping question. Like, how do you sort of organize your professional life back home with the sort of initiatives and the projects that you're involved with in Armenia? I think that this type of sort of structuring, if I'm thinking of, again, my diasporan community in Australia, it's very long distance to travel to Armenia. It can be a huge issue if you're working full time, I don't know, for a company, in a company that might not be as, I guess, social, so in a place that might not be as socialized in terms of, leave and understanding in that, people have more than a single interest. What's maybe not getting into it in too much detail, but what sort of some advice you could give or you've learned in balancing, existing in multiple places, doing lots of different things at the same time?
That's the point, because we try to get the most balanced it's possible, but very, very soon this Armenian thing is going more and more and taking more your time. Well, I am lucky because my schedule is quite free, and I'm quite free to organize it how I would like. And when you make a research, when you're a lawyer and when you are making a research, you're not in a laboratory, doing something physically. You just need a computer and an internet. So if I have a Wi-Fi, I can do my research anywhere I am. And for this, Armenian cafes are very comfortable to this. Yeah, for others, there are a lot of things which you can do, being at your country where you live, and there is also a lot of programs which allow you to or to come with a goal, for example, to make volunteer, and you just take a month or 2 weeks or a week, and you just come and you do something that maybe it's something you think it's useful, and you also have the impression that it is concrete thing, because this is also one of the point of community work, that we do a lot of things, and maybe we do not have the result as soon as we would like to have, and it makes people disappointed, because it's always better to have a result, that you can see and touch, and but if you just come to Armenia and you go to a village and I don't know, you repair something, or you help a school to repair something, it's going to take you 2 weeks. Maybe it can be on your vacations, but you also know that you have done it and it's done. So, and in September, children are going to be in a class which walls are here and everything works, and maybe it's also it's not I mean, Armenians are very global thinkers and everyone wants to change everything like this, but actually it doesn't work in this way, and it is not a it's not a shameful thing just to do a small project, but do this until the end and that will be the best thing you can do.
Right. So I think the Youth Ambassador program, organized by the Office of the High Commissioner of the Diaspora, from how it's been outlined, it's obviously you guys came here last year for 2 weeks to do the training / meet and greets and stuff, and that was the time where we met as well. Maybe you could sort of take us through what those 2 weeks were like, and then how, if directly or indirectly, that translated into the work that you've been doing over the past 8 to 10 months or whatever it's been so far. How have you found the program? Do you feel the work you're doing's effective? Do you think it's enhanced your ability to connect with Armenia? All these questions. I'll sort of jump in. I know it's a lot of questions in one question, but how were the 2 weeks to begin with?
Yes, well, this Young Ambassador program is something I really recommend to all young Armenian people. I sent my my application hesitating because you don't really know what is it. I hadn't know anyone who had done this program, so I didn't really know what to expect. But I just tried, and I was like, let's see what will be, and I think it is one of the best experiences I had, honestly, in the Armenian community work, and more largely it's one of our participators was repeating every day, it's a kind of life change experience. It's a kind of life change experience. Yeah, actually, so they choose kind of we were 18, I guess, and it's about 18 or 20 people, young Armenian active people from 20 to 35 years old, and the first part of the program takes place in Armenia. So it was the period I had the pleasure to meet you. It is 2 weeks in Yerevan, where you have like a very, very huge program with conferences, with workshops, with the visitings, and the goal is to make us to give us a better vision of what is going in Armenia. So we met, for example, almost all the ministries representatives. So we had a vision about foreign affairs, economic, education, culture, economic, and so on. Then we had conferences from teachers about geopolitical situation, about how to be a leader, about the communication. So all these skills we basically need to be an ambassador, but more generally to be an effective active people. And also we had the meetings with important and the most influencing programs representatives like ABC, Re-Armenia, Birthright Armenia, Teach for Armenia. Well, I'm sorry if I'm forgetting some, I have forgot some of them. And anyway, you have a kind of panorama of the Armenia. And I'm used to come to Armenia several times a year. And I'm basically from Armenia and my parents are from Yerevan, so I'm not just discovering, but I had the impression to rediscover the country. And maybe it's a kind of very pathetic way to say, I also had the impression to rediscover myself, because I had a very huge and different view to Armenia. We also visited, every year you have a visit to a region. So we were at Lori region and we met young people, young active people from Lori. So the generation before us went to Artsakh and so on. So I don't know what the region is chosen for this year, but all these visits are so enriching, exciting, and it's very tiring thing also, because it begins at 9 a.m. and it finishes at 7 p.m. and you have to be present mentally and physically, and to be active and and to take the best you can take. And once you are back to your communities, you have 10 months to do your work. We are quite free to choose the directions we would like. So, well, to take my example, very naturally, I choose the academic and the legal field, because it was something that was more easier maybe, and also more interesting to me. But my colleagues, I don't know, could choose cultural things, educational things. Most of them work with Armenian schools in communities, others with the cultural centers, some of them with sports centers. I mean, it's very, very large, and there's no border. You can choose whatever you want. And have also 3 months evaluation, evaluation more about, you have to explain what you have done. So we are free, but in the same time you have a frame, you have also something official. It's not like this. And it basically lasts a year, and it's something which takes time to you, obviously. And I can't say that it's just a little thing you add to your schedule. No, it's something that if you do it seriously, you have to spend time also. But once again, it's something I recommend, because you have this concrete link with Armenia. And also I met really amazing people from all around the world. I mean, we had people from Brazil, from Canada. I'm trying to find the most the countries which are more far from Armenia. Kind of all European countries, Russia, of course. And basically, we understand that we are in the same time different, because anyway we take the culture of the country where we live, and that is normal. But in the same time, we have a lot of common problems, which are very specific to Armenia, about diaspora organization, about getting people gathered around the same goal, and to try to work together without trying to be leader. Everyone can't be leader in the community, and there are a lot of things like this, which also show that we stay Armenian anywhere we are. But in the same time, just to add to this concept of young ambassador, I think that basically every Armenian is an ambassador, because obviously everything we do or we say influence in a way or another the vision of Armenians in the world. When you are in France and your colleagues know you're Armenian, if you're a good colleague, they will have the impression that all Armenians are like you. But if you're a bad one, they also going to have the impression. It's very, yeah, it's something human, which is not very intelligent, but it is. It works like this, and so yeah, we kind of everyone is kind of ambassador of Armenia.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's so much interesting stuff there to explore. Unfortunately, yeah, we can't speak forever. So I might just touch on two things. One was the identity, sort of the self exploration coming to Armenia and participating. I think specifically when you're surrounded by people who are doing similar things or helping. And then the second thing is how you touched on the sort of similarities and differences, even though we're coming from such different contexts, from different countries. You're saying that there's a lot of similarities in terms of the issues being faced by the various communities. So maybe if we just start with the identity one, I've sort of, that resonates with me quite heavily in terms of when I moved to Armenia. I found my own understanding of myself developed very, very quickly compared to, living in Australia. But that's from someone who hasn't actually been. The first time I came here was when I was 20 or something. So I hadn't actually been to Armenia for most of my childhood. How did you find that experience? Like, what sort of things did you notice? Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that aspect.
So I think all the immigrants, and more precisely Armenian, have at one moment of their life kind of identical crisis because we are everywhere, but in the same time we have this Armenian impression, and you are a little bit shared about being in a society which, for example, French society or Australian, but in the same time do everything to keep your Armenian values, principles, way to live, and so on and so on. And when you take part in this kind of programs, and when you go to Armenia, not visiting your family and not visiting people and just you go out from your comfort zone, and you are facing the challenges maybe you were not facing before. You also understand how are you ready to face people which are in the same time very different, but in the same time has this will to stay Armenian. And in a group of 20, it's quite normal to have a kind of small arguments, and the fact that we managed to avoid most of them is also something hope. It gives us a hope that Armenians can work together and can share 10 hours by day and just be friends and do what they can do without without trying to be more leader than another. So yeah, it's also about how to stay yourself and how to teach other people, and how to teach from how to learn from other people, which is also very important. Yeah, because in a dialogue, if you just listen someone to respond, that's not a dialogue. If you listen someone to learn something, that is a real one. So yeah, maybe maybe we have the hope that it will be more general for Armenians.
Yeah, right. No, it's I imagine coming into a program like this, obviously you're going to be surrounded by people who are more like you, been on potentially a similar trajectory, but in different fields or from different countries. So I feel that, and you touched on this earlier, I feel that's probably initially what would be very appealing. It would be to come and just meet people from 30 different countries in one day and then see. And I've obviously done a few things where I've had the opportunity to meet people from different places, like Armenians, young Armenians who've come from different countries, and seeing that there is a connection despite the enormity of differences that you've experienced in your lives, different accents, different languages, but then there's this connection where you sort of have this understanding, and even if you don't have this understanding, you understand what the differences are. That's a whole other point in itself. But being able to connect with people that are different but are Armenian, I think that's such an amazing experience. Which maybe that can lead us to more specifically, what sort of issues were you guys discussing that you found were across the board, compared to some issues that would be unique to Montpellier or France? And I think that's a really important point that needs to sort of be combined. We need sort of like a unitary vision and understanding of what these issues and points of improvement are in diaspora communities, because you mentioned the youth summit that we had last year, which was great to attend. I was sitting there listening to speakers from all over the world, and they were describing issues that I had felt in my community. I was like, oh damn, this guy's in, I don't know, Istanbul, and he's like complaining about the same things that we complain about. So there's obviously something there that we need to really align and do what you were saying before, which is come together on specific visions, so we can all put our effort towards one thing at a time and really actually make a difference. So yeah, maybe you could talk about some of these issues that you found were shared amongst diaspora communities.
So maybe the most important was the thing that it's not easy for associations to get involved young people. So you have a group of active people who are were more and more age, and you don't have the new generation which is going to take this role. And it is something we have in Montpellier, and unfortunately, it is something we have everywhere, to find these people who are ready to spend their free time, maybe their weekend, maybe their personal life moments, and to go to association and to give some time. That is a huge problem, because if we don't have this human resource, well, obviously, the associations do not exist. They exist only because there are people working there, and that is something, important. And the thing that people maybe do not understand why these associations or community work is important. They are like, well, we talk in Armenian at home. What the point to go to Armenian classes, in the association? But it is, once again, it is not only about classes. It's about getting connected to other Armenian children, and it is getting friendships with Armenian children, and they are going to grow up together, and so on and so on. So there is one thing. The second thing, it's about the organization of communities. There are a lot of communities which are divided for kind of sort reasons, which are more or less, legitimate or rational. For example, I can take the example I know well. It's French example. In Paris, you have a kind of 100 associations. Well, obviously, the community of Paris, it's huge. Maybe one would be not enough, but 100. It's the same in Marseille. The same. It's a city where the community is huge, but you have a lot of associations. And the thing, it's not about their number, but about the relationships they have one with another. If all of them were kind of best friends, it would be okay. One would like to do dance, another would like to do, I don't know, legal thing, and so on. But the problem is there is very often a kind of I don't know, competition, concurrence, and this kind of things also divide and divide our energy, our efforts, and actually it makes all the efforts less important and less effective, and that is also a problem. So maybe this kind of individual thinking and incapacity of thinking about common goal and common interest, general interest, Armenian interest, and all these sort of things. It's something we can find in USA, in France, in Russia, and I guess maybe in Australia. So, and it is more specific to Armenian, I don't know, thinking, or I don't even know how to describe this. I hope it's not something essential to our identity, and it's just people who do not know how to work. But we don't know how to deal with the state. We don't know how to deal with the common goal. We don't know how to deal with the general interest. And we all have individual interests, and we are convinced that our interest is more important than my neighbor's one. And that's kind of each thing. And Armenians are very paradoxical because they are in the same time very selfish, but at the same time very open. And it's kind of contradictory in our community.
Yeah, definitely. No, to put it, I think in a diplomatic way, I think the goals necessarily aren't of the best quality. As in, if you have a really, really good goal, a high level goal, that should benefit everyone, not just yourself. So I think the level of thinking of what's good and what's bad in general, would really improve things if you could sort of think at a high level. But what do you? I have my views on this point, and it's I understand completely what you're describing. Did you guys come up with any sort of solutions? Like what would you? It's like the hardest question, but what sort of modes of attack are there to sort of break down these problems and start fixing them?
Yeah, we had also a session about experience exchange, and we tried to present solutions we had in our communities. And the solutions were suggested, but they do not work everywhere in the same way, and it also depends on things like if the community is big enough, if there are political directions, in the community, or it's more apolitic, and there are a lot of sort of things. For example, in Montpellier, we have only one association, but because we are not as many as, for example, in Paris, and also because we always had important personalities who made everything to not divide our community. But I mean, if they were not strong enough, or because we also had some tentatives, or people tried also to divide us, but we did manage to stay. But it is easier to organize like a small community, and it is much more difficult to organize the more important one. And once again, our association is apolitic. We have no political affiliation, not in Armenian politics, neither in French one. I mean, if you would like to vote for anyone you want in French election, it's not our business, because if we begin to also divide for these reasons, I mean, it is like endless, So every solution is unique. In some communities, the church also plays a very important role, and to have good relationships with church representatives is also something important. We don't have a church in Montpellier, so we don't have this problem. But when there is an Armenian church in the city, it's always a kind of point of, of a lot of not arguments, but it is the center of a lot of things. So if you are an active, you have to deal with, and you have to deal with in a very smart way as well. So yeah, it also depends on specificities of every community.
Yeah. No, I think particularly at this point in time that we're having this conversation, this point of being apolitical or identifying the things of a community or a group that need to stay apolitical in order for it to continue and to be able to flourish. I think on the context of what's happening in Armenia, and not from having any particular political point of view, it's just understanding like how to structure things, where the church, I don't know, doesn't get involved in certain things and the government doesn't get involved in certain things. I think that just general understanding of how governments work and those sorts of things is quite lacking in our communities, because people respond to some of these issues that we're facing very emotionally and irrationally, which is completely understandable because they're very existential questions and topics that affect a lot of us. But I don't think it should come at the cost of the destroying the structural elements of a society in order to be outspoken or to express your emotional sort of views on things. So that I think is particularly poignant view right now, which I'm trying to, when I have these conversations, I try to just explain it to people apolitically. It's like, look, this isn't a supporting one side or the other. This is how things are structured. This is how things are managed. We need to be wary of these things so we're not accidentally wrecking something that's really important to our future or those sorts of questions. So it takes a bit of nuance, and it can be very hard to talk in the face of certain emotions. But I think it's so interesting that you raise this, because it sort of comes full circle back to the communities in the diaspora, and it's like representing what's happening in Armenia right now. It's all connected, interestingly enough. So
actually,
that's sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that because of Armenians did not have state in all the period of the history, the church took from time to time this role of being this structure near which Armenian were gathered and had the feeling to be a community. And that's why these relationships between state and the church is very ambiguous in Armenia. It is something like we couldn't even imagine in France, because from 95 year, the separation between state and church is like a very clear thing, and church has nothing to do with politics. But the fact that the political situation we have in Armenia shows also the immaturity of Armenian state, and also political conscience, and the fact that no one is wondering what the church is doing in this issue. Even if they raise very important questions, they do not give any answers, and that is the issue. That is the point.
Yeah, that's we could sort of go on this topic for quite some time, I think. But just to sort of put it succinctly, we've almost been talking for an hour. Basically, I think, it's like not only the church not getting involved, but you picture the circumstances historically where the state's gotten involved in religious aspects, which is just as disastrous, which, thankfully that's not happening as well. But the other side of it is having a vision for Armenia. So I think what I'm finding is there's two types of people in to do with this topic. There are people who are like, they know exactly what they don't want without offering what should be happening, which is almost like, a dog chasing a car. It doesn't know what to do when it catches up to the car. It's like, now I'm here. there's no further thought process. And the other is, you know, people coming together being like, look, you know, whether it's talking from a legal perspective or it's talking from a policy perspective, it's like, these are the concrete steps that we need to take to get to X goal or whatever it is. So I'm trying to, you know, in my circles, trying to push people more towards that second type. It's like, you can have your own vision for Armenia. It's just important to have a vision, not to just, you know, destroy what exists or just not, you know what you don't want. I don't think that's good enough based on what circumstances we're in currently. But yeah, not to put too fine of a point on it, I'd just like to thank you for joining and sharing your views. I found it very, very insightful, and yeah, a lot of avenues for me to now explore to sort of bring what you guys have in France to my communities in Australia. So I'd just like to thank you for that. Yeah, is there anything else you want to say before we close up?
No, just to thank you for the invitation and for the project, for the very interesting and important project. Thank you for the job you're doing.
Yeah, no, amazing. Okay, thanks, Gohar.